Welcome to Hope for Anxiety and OCD, episode 81. I am your host, Carrie Bock, and I am here with my husband, Steve Bock. Say hello.
Hello.
This is actually our second anniversary episode. We came on episode 10 to talk about dating, that was right before we got married. We sat on the floor in the closet. Now the recording setup is a little bit better, but still in the closet.
We are still in the closet.
That's the dream for the next house, is we have a place to put the podcast studio. But until then, here we are. And we also did episode 50, which was on our first year of marriage, you talking about, we had just gotten back from Vanderbilt discussing, trying to figure out what was going on with your eyes and all of that.
Right.
All of the tests that they did on you, 6 hours, and really didn't find the results. Now we're here. We're going to be married for 2 years.
Yes. Yay.
And this will come right out shortly after our anniversary. So you finally got a diagnosis as of last week.
That's correct. Finally.
Yeah.
It took a year and a half, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Something like that. After several visits to several places, long story short, we got a diagnosis. Knew that something was wrong, but did not know what. And a diagnosis is good in one sense because you now know what you're fighting against, and then a little scary in another sense because you know what you're fighting against. So,
yeah.
But yes, we got a diagnosis, which is, let's see, I've been practicing on this one because it's a long name. First time I heard it, I went, do what? And I had to look it up. But the abbreviated version of it would be SCA, which is spinocerebellar ataxia.
Good job.
And for the record, that is the first time I've said that correctly without having to look at it first. But yes, I've been working on that. I don't know why that's so difficult to say, but it is.
Yes, it is. You had been referred to a neurologist and then specialty neurologist back up at Vanderbilt, and they were the ones to figure out that this actually wasn't an eye issue. This was a neurological issue affecting your cerebellum, and part of that was you started to have balance issues that got worse progressively, and that was like one indicator that we knew, wait a minute, what else is going on here?
And the eye issue was secondary.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't the cause, it was secondary.
Yeah. And this is a genetic condition that we have no idea.
There's, I think, 3 ways that you can get it, but we think that it's genetic because the other 2 options, and I can't even remember what they are off the top of my head, but they don't match up exactly. So it could be one of those, but I don't think so.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, it's genetic. I don't know where to look family tree-wise. I don't know where to go with that because it only goes back so far for me. I can tell you who's who to a certain point, but I don't know their health situation at all.
And as far as we know, none of them had this.
No, we had some other things going on.
Yeah.
Lou Gehrig's and Alzheimer's, but not this.
Recognizing that this is a chronic condition, something that they can treat symptoms for, but there is no cure for.
Right.
What was it like to get that news?
Somewhat shocking, somewhat not. Initially, we thought, when we just thought it was the eyes, we thought it was, if I'm saying this right, Leber's disease, because I also had the symptoms for that some, but that, I don't think there's a cure for that either. And so with thinking about that for some time, when they told me that, again, we kind of weren't sure about that one. That was kind of maybe not. But it mentally prepared me for the concept of having something that's not curable.
Mm-hmm.
And just because it's not curable doesn't mean that I'm going to die tomorrow. There's no guarantee of how long anyone lives for that matter, but
that's true. Very true.
Also, with this type of ataxia, there are 40 plus variants of it. So some of those start at childhood. Some of those start later in life. Some people live to be somewhat older. There's no way to know. And until we get further along, we don't have enough to go on to know exactly which one that I would have.
Yeah. I think that's the hardest part about it for me, is that there are so many unknowns. They really can't tell us anything about how this course is going to go. We've even heard, hey, you could plateau and not decline.
Right.
We've heard some people decline more rapidly than others. And one hopeful point that was made was that because it has taken you so long to show these level of symptoms that most likely your decline would be slow.
Sure.
In a sense, the past is a predictor of the future. That does give us some hope. It's hard for me not knowing if our daughter has inherited this and whether or not she will be affected by it later in life. They won't test her because they want that to be her decision when she turns 18. So as long as she doesn't show any symptoms prior to, she won't be tested unless she decides to be through genetic counseling and so forth. That is a hard piece because when we were looking at, is this Leber's disease or not? Leber's disease actually has a very much quicker onset than the symptoms that you were experiencing.
Right.
People tend to go legally blind pretty quickly with that.
Right.
Yeah.
That only runs through your mother's side. So in that case, and it affects mostly, I think, all males. So comes from your mother, affects the males. That made me feel a little better for her. Now I do the math in my head and I think of how many family members I have. And I think, well, I'm not good at stating the odds on any given thing, but I would have to think that the odds are a little better for her, only in the sense that none of my family has shown anything like this. So that would tell me maybe it's skipped so many generations. I don't know. But that gives me some hope.
Mm-hmm.
It's a tricky one for sure, and it's scary.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways. Honestly, am I scared? No. I don't know that I am. Trying to deal with it, that's where the focus is. What measures do you take for balance? And we've worked on that. And that's kind of where my focus is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I just appreciate, I think, that you have had a sense of humor about the whole thing.
Sure.
Tell them what you asked me today.
Which time? Naming the cane?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, well, I thought of a couple of names. I think the first one that I asked you was, what if we named it Abel? Because, Cain and Abel, if you know your Bible.
Uh-huh.
If you don't, well, you're going to have to look that up and find it and learn it. That's a good story. But yes, I wanted to name it Abel. And then the second one I think that we may have chosen was Walkie, or the
assistant.
The assistant. But that just, I don't know. I can't imagine being in a restaurant, losing the cane and going, where's the assistant? That just, I don't know that that's going to work out well. So, although I don't know that where's Walkie is going to be any better. They'll be looking for a dog or something, but anyway.
Yeah, we thought about, submitting it to the Wally Show to see if they would name the cane. But
what would they name it?
Yeah, if you have any good names for the cane, you can write into the show.
And that's a Christian radio show.
Yes,
yeah, where they try to name it for those who aren't familiar with that.
Mm-hmm. We mainly wanted to update people on that, but then also shift gears and talk about our second year of marriage. Had a lot of joys to it, had some sorrows, but also our greatest joy, of course, was having our daughter, who is now sleeping in the crib. We had to wait till she fell asleep.
Yes, the FOMO is real. Is that a phrase? It ought to be.
Yes, I think so.
Yeah, she definitely has a fear of missing out.
Mm-hmm. And she definitely, it feels like, has been teething forever.
Yes.
I did not realize how much of a labor-intensive process it was to get teeth in your mouth before having a child. What has it been like for you becoming a parent? How has that affected you and changed you?
Oh, goodness. I have always been a person who likes routine and a person who has had some structure. I get up early in the morning. I brush my teeth. I do certain things in order. I get my breakfast, get my coffee, everything's in order. And everyone that knows me knows that. Well, have a baby. Goodbye routine.
Pretty much, yeah.
And the thing you have to do with a baby is what? Form a routine. So it's difficult. But, I learned to work with the baby and be prepared for any interruption because it happens constantly. When I was trying to make my routine work, I was constantly annoyed with the idea that I couldn't get anything done. And then we got some patterns going and I learned routines and what worked with her. Now I can actually get things done. But having the baby definitely changed my world completely. And honestly, for the better, definitely. I wouldn't trade her for anything in the world. She is just absolutely wonderful. Always happy, always smiling, and sticks her tongue out at me a lot, which is just kind of funny. Yeah, so it's definitely changed me. It's been a good experience, but getting out, even to do something is like mowing the grass. If she's fussy and having a bad day, I may have to put that off a little longer because you have things to do too. We both have to share that. And so you just learn, if your mowing day is always on this day at this time, well, if you have a child, you can kiss that goodbye. But it's been good.
Yeah. I would say that if you do it right, it helps you realize like how much you have to give and how much you have to sacrifice what you want for the sake of your child. And it's helped me really learn to let go of some control. I think that that's something that I still struggle with. It helped me learn to go with the flow a lot more and just kind of take things as they come. There were definitely some early days that were really, really hard. She was amazing for about the first 3 weeks, and then she started cluster feeding. I was exhausted. She had gas, and probably about that week 3 through, I don't know, week 7 or week 10, it was just, I thought, how in the world am I ever going to be able to go back to work? I took 3 months off, and fortunately, right around the time I went back to work, she started sleeping more through the night. So that was a good thing. Mm-hmm.
And she is a great child, like all children. You know, she has her moments.
Mm-hmm.
And it's nice now that she's sleeping through the night. It was difficult when she wasn't. And I would say when she doesn't get her naps throughout the day, oh my goodness, that's a difficulty. For starters, I miss my nap when she doesn't nap.
We have a unique situation childcare wise too, because I stayed home for 3 months with her for maternity leave, gave my clients kind of alternative people to see if they needed to check in with somebody or see someone for that time period. And then as we were in that process of looking at daycares, and I had looked at daycares when I was pregnant, put myself on several waiting lists. Middle Tennessee is just exploding, booming. Places are short-staffed, right now. And it was hard to find a daycare that was a quality place that had an opening for an infant because, the ratios are so much lower too for that age group. Far as they can only have 4 infants per 1 adult. And at some point very early in her life, I'd say probably within the first month, I just looked at you one day and we were both sitting there and I just said, will you pray about staying at home with her? Yeah. Do you remember that?
I do. And my first thought was, I just don't see myself as a stay-at-home dad. I've always been go, 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 gotta work. Like, if you're only working one job, something's wrong with you. No, I do not think that any longer, but I used to. Bit of a workaholic. And so for you to ask me that, I thought, wait a minute, so I'll be home with the baby. Not that that isn't a lot of work. It is. But being stuck in the house just didn't seem like me. Yeah, and then I decided to do it because of health situations and financially it made sense.
Mm-hmm.
And also, I got to thinking, we can raise this child with the values that we have and we want. So after I got to thinking about it, it was kind of a no-brainer. Why wouldn't I do this? I thought about how many children grow up without a dad.
Yeah.
Or a dad's just too busy because he's working so often. And I thought, I can be that dad that's there for her. So not that I'm trying to be the hero, but I want her to have her best life possible. So it was a no-brainer after that. I had to do it.
Yeah.
And I have no regrets. I wouldn't change a thing.
I think when you're an older parent, it's like you have more of the mental and emotional capacity for the child, but less of the physical capacity. We're just both like, I'm so tired.
Yes. There are days I'm like, I don't even feel like eating dinner. I just want to go to bed, but it's a good thing.
Yeah, we really evaluated it and looked at how much working full-time was affecting your health. You were getting more headaches from looking at the computer screen. You were exhausted at the end of the day. And we thought, well, you're really going to be working to pay for daycare. And what sense is that? We were able to get some health insurance, and that was an answer to prayer for sure.
Definitely.
That worked out. And then it was like, okay, once that piece was in, you were like, what am I going to put in my notice? And you were excited about kind of the new venture.
Absolutely.
It was harder for me going back to work and really like trusting that you were going to have things taken care of. I think because I had just been so focused on her for so long, and then having to switch gears into focusing on my business, rebuilding things, finding out which clients wanted to come back and which didn't. And I will tell those of you who do not know, so I came back from maternity leave on June 1st. This summer was probably the slowest summer on record. And summer is typically a slower time of the year for therapists because people are gone on vacation. Kids are at home from school. school, people are busier, and it's sunny outside and they can go outside to the lake and have a good time. Whereas the winter months, times in October or in February, tend to be a little bit busier than the summertime. So it was rough in the beginning trying to build a caseload back up. And then I would hear Faith crying in the other room and I wanted to go run and get her, but I couldn't. That was super, super tough for me. It's easier now because you've had some time and I trust you that you're taking care of it. But in the beginning, I felt like this need to go run and rescue you and her at the same time.
Sure. Well, and when you're, as a guy, I wasn't used to that. I love babies, always have. But getting one to stop crying and knowing the specific cries, which is a language all in itself, but learning that and how to cope. And if I get annoyed, that affects her. Mm-hmm. And so changing the routine around and making that work, oh my goodness, that was a hard thing to do at first. There is a bit of a baby boot camp to go through, I think. But once you get through it and you know it, I don't know if it becomes easier. It is more manageable though.
Yeah.
I guess it's easier, but I'm scared to say that because I'll wake up tomorrow and it'll just be crazy or something. Anyways.
Yeah. Raising a child is a little bit like doing therapy in the sense that as therapists, we go to these conferences and they teach us something, right? And they're like, this is amazing. It works so great with clients. It's awesome. You're just going to see life transformation and you're all pumped, right? And you're like, okay, I got my 3-step process. I know what to do. And then you try it out with your first client and it does not work. It falls flat. Either you did something wrong or it just didn't work the way it was supposed to. And parenting for me has very much been like that. I have the baby books. I read, okay, it says do this or it says do that. But then really you have to learn your baby and you have to learn what they respond to, what's best for them. And trust me, it has totally not always gone by the book. And that at different points made me anxious. There was, I guess I just want to share this for other moms too. There was a period where she just would not sleep in the bassinet. It was just hang it up. She was not going to do it. And the only place I could get her to sleep was the swing. And I felt just this sense of angst and guilt going, but the rules say I'm supposed to lay her on her back and I'm supposed to lay her in the crib and she's not supposed to sleep in the swing. And, what if I harm her? And what if she stops breathing or something? But we did it. And you know what? She slept and it was important for her to get her sleep and it was important for us to get our sleep. So our first trip away from the home with the baby, we took the swing with us.
Thank goodness we did.
Yes. We had a little Memorial Day getaway before I went back to work and you became full-time dad.
Yeah, so. we traded places there. I will say the swing worked great. And also, and whoever told me this, I owe you 1,000 hugs or $1 million or something, but put the baby on the dryer.
I think that was somebody at your work, right?
I think
that
so,
had done
yeah.
that. Yeah.
And yes, it was. And when I first heard, I was like, put the baby on the dryer. That sounds crazy. But then you hit this moment where, okay, this baby, she is screaming at the top of her lungs. I cannot stop her. She's hyperventilating. I don't know what to do. I think I'm hyperventilating. So I pick her up and we go down to the dryer. I think you even said, didn't you say something about the dryer? Sure, let's go. We go, we put the baby on the dryer. She stops. She just stares at us and it actually worked. So moms out there, if you've never tried it, or dads, do it. It worked.
Yeah, it's something about the vibration when you turn it on. They really like it. How do you feel like becoming a parent has affected our marriage?
I think, honestly, bear with me on this statement, but it will either make you or break you.
I would agree with that, yeah.
And for us, I think it's definitely strengthened us. The problem, I think it is everyone has a way that they think is right. But as a married couple, you have to work together. Mm-hmm. And when the baby's screaming, you don't have time to figure out, okay, what do you think? Well, what do you think? No, you got to calm this baby down. The longer you leave the baby crying, the worse it is. And so in most cases, I feel like. So we really had to work together and just roll with things and not get angry with one another. And we just had to make it work. And I think that we get to a point where we just know. We're like, oh, the baby's hungry. We know that cry. Let's feed the baby or whatever. Whereas initially that wasn't the case. It was, why is this baby crying? What did we do wrong? And I think some couples could easily say, it's your fault. You did this, but we figured out a way to make it work.
Or to give each other ideas without getting defensive. You know?
Which is so easy to do, especially when you have this little tiny being that is screaming in a way that should not be humanly possible. I do not know how she screams that loudly. The other thing that worked really well for us, when we had company over, she was like the best. I don't know how that works. Not that she's ever that bad, honestly. We're very blessed. But she rarely cries with company. She's just even happier. She's just a social butterfly. And so, yeah, we love company now.
I knew that you were going to be a good dad because you were so supportive and so open, like during the pregnancy process. And that was really great. You went through the classes with me.
Oh, those were so much fun. I remember when you said, we got classes, let's do them. And I said, all right, that's fine, And then I found out that they were going to be on Sunday, which
during
Sunday evening
time.
at that. Yeah. And I was like, oh no. But, you get over it. That's so stupid. I sound like an old man. I can't miss my nap. But I did. And, I learned a ton out of it. Mm-hmm. I really did. And we even went to a CPR class, and we did a couple of things that were just, I like to learn. So it was good. Mm-hmm. It was good. And you've been a great mom for that matter. While we're dishing out compliments here, you've been a wonderful mom. So.
Yeah. And our doula actually took a couple pictures while I was in labor. I didn't realize that she took these pictures, but it's basically of you like supporting me during the labor process. And I look at those and I'm just like, oh, like it just kind of, you really like makes me, warm and fuzzy inside because that was a very hard time for me. The pregnancy was actually much tougher than the labor was, but going through labor is not super fun. So,
and you know how they show it. I'd never had a child before. Well, I guess technically I've still never had a child.
You've never birthed a child.
Right. I've never birthed a child before. But that's probably a good thing. The way that they show it on TV is not reality, clearly.
Yeah.
And man, no one gave me a cigar. Not that I'd have smoked it, but no one gave me one. Of course, whatever. But I wasn't sitting waiting in some outside lobby somewhere. I was in the room with you, and there was no break. I remember thinking, well, I think I'll go get lunch now. And then I looked at you, and you're like, oh, no, you won't. And I was like, no, I won't. And not that you were rude. I thought things were good. I need, nope, snack bar will work, or just, well, never mind. I don't need anything. But we worked together, and that was the first sign that, you know what, you got a parent together. I guess the birth thing, you were doing 99% of the work, ladies. Don't get like, oh, what's he thinking? But no, you were doing all the work. But it starts there, you do what you got to do. If somebody's hurting, you got to be there for them, especially if it's your spouse. Mm-hmm. And during the labor process, my goodness, I can't think of a better time to give support. So we met at work. We had to work together.
There used to be this belief that husbands shouldn't be present during labor. I can't remember why the doctors had some theory on this. And I read in a book that this man actually handcuffed himself to his pregnant wife.
Smart man.
So he could be with her during labor, and really changed that process and how doctors looked at it. Now, most fathers are in the delivery room that are involved anyway. We've had some other stressful experiences this year, and I would say that those aren't necessarily things that we're ready to talk about or appropriate to talk about, but it seemed like when it rained, it poured.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's been a challenging year, but at the same time, in those challenges, there's always growth.
Yeah.
You really, when you're up against something, you find out who you are. You find out that you cannot handle all of this by yourself. And I'm very thankful that we have one another, to lean on, because without church and God and being married and those things and having that support system that we have, man, I don't know how we'd have made it through some of this.
Right. Yeah. Just people that have lifted us up in prayer and talked to us and checked in on us, even people that know about your health and waiting for a diagnosis, just being able to tell those people like, okay, well, here we are. This is where we're at and what we're facing, and this is what we're looking at in the future. I think you and I have had to lean on each other a lot for venting about various issues and processing different things as they've come up in a way that spouses should do, but I don't think everybody does. I don't think everybody opens themselves up fully, vulnerably to their spouse to process through what they're thinking and feeling about the situations in their life that happen to them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've learned too that it's impossible for me to have all the answers. So I don't try to have answers for everything. And usually the answer to the problem is listen. And so I've had to really work hard. Not that I was a terrible listener, but I've had to work really hard at listening, which I'm still working on. That takes time. That doesn't happen overnight. But a lot of the things that we've dealt with have required listening.
Yeah.
Because there's no easy answer. Sometimes you have to get it out of your system and vent. And if I'm venting, you listen. And if you're venting, I listen. That's just the way that it is. But listening is a big deal. That's just, I always hear it and I always believe it. I hear people say all the time, God gave you one mouth and 2 ears, so you probably should listen twice as much, right? It's true. Very true.
Yeah. And I think those things have grown us closer to God in prayer and closer to each other as we've kind of leaned on each other through these processes.
Definitely. And having our daughter there has been helpful too, because when you're down or something's just difficult and you've got this baby that is just giggling and smiling and sticking her tongue out at you, you cannot be mad. You cannot be upset with life. I really believe our daughter has this gift, and that is to be an encourager, to be someone who she doesn't even know words yet, but we just kind of pass her around for the hugs and smiles, and it just really lightens the mood. It changes the focal point from your problem to just this happy little girl that just wants nothing more than to make you happy. Just been a blessing.
Yeah, I think about that too, and just that Faith was conceived and born really during some dark times and some emotional struggles, but that she's a reminder of the goodness of God and of the faithfulness of God. When people ask, like, why did you name your daughter Faith? It's like, well, it took a lot of faith for us to get to this point, to be alone and then to be older and find each other, not know if we could have a child or not, and have her. I really believe that she was born for a purpose in God's plan. And had we received this diagnosis before we got pregnant, we probably would have said, I don't think we should do this. I don't think we should go through with this. So she showed up at just the right time. And part of my process right now is just trusting God one day at a time to be able to give me the strength to make it through the day, but also to know that He's in control, that He loves us, and that He's going to take care of us regardless of what happens, that He's going to provide for our needs, that hopefully next time, when we record this in a couple of years, that we'll be in a 1-story house.
Yes.
Just believing that.
Very excited for that day.
Yeah, that she won't have to traverse the stairs that are in our home, and just knowing that God is good and He loves us, and even in the dark times that He's still here, He's still present, He's for us, and that keeps us going just one day at a time, one step at a time.
Yeah.
I think for me too, living in the moment, learning so much about mindfulness, applying that during my pregnancy, just trying to get through the back pain that I was dealing with at the time, it's allowed me to manage these situations much better because I realize I can only deal with what we have today, So today was about getting your cane in the mail and you starting to learn how to use it.
Right.
Today wasn't the day to worry about, are you going to end up in a wheelchair? Because we're not there.
No.
And we hope to not be there for quite some time. But, when those thoughts enter my mind, it's like, okay, pause. Right now, we're thankful every day that Steve can walk. We're thankful for every day that you get to see your daughter grow up. There was a time period, where I was like praying that God would preserve your sight, that you'd be able to see her, even be born, we just didn't know. There was so much we didn't know at the time. So, that God has allowed you to do that. And learning about this diagnosis has just really reinforced the decision to have you be a stay-at-home dad, because now you're getting more quality time with her.
Right.
And I love being able to work from home and online and kind of see her during lunch and in between clients. I don't have a commute. It's just been a huge blessing for our family to be able to be involved in her life. And there's so much I think that could have derailed this podcast from continuing, but we're still here. It's still here 2 years later.
That's right.
And after just everything that we've gone through, I'm so thankful for that. I'm thankful for the people that find us, that tune in and, are willing to listen to me ramble and fumble through interviewing people and just have, an amazing teammate as well that works behind the scenes with me to do our editing, social media, and those types of things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We are so blessed. I hope that as a listener, you don't hear this or someone doesn't hear this and think, my gosh, they got some problems. No, I hope you see that we are blessed. That yes, there's something I've been diagnosed with, but God's still blessing me.
Mm-hmm.
And I was thinking, I can't help but think of our dear friend who you just had on recently. I don't remember what it is, 76? Is that it? I can't remember, but...
Don't remember the number. It was John Bennett.
Yes. And we actually spoke with him recently, he and his lovely wife. What an encouragement. He says with what he has that God's blessed him. He wouldn't try and change it for anything. And when I first heard that, I was like, are you crazy? No one wishes cancer on themselves.
Right.
But he has such a good attitude about it. And I thought, my gosh, if I can just have that attitude and see the blessings and not the bad, and see that I have a wonderful wife who supports me and I have a beautiful daughter and we just have a good support system. We go to church here. We just love what we have and God has blessed us dearly. It hasn't always been easy, but it's just better and better every day. So there's a purpose in this. And that's the part that I have to see.
Yeah. And if anybody happens to know anybody with SCA, because it's just so rare, and we've looked into some support groups, but we have yet to really meet anybody that's dealt with that. So if you want to drop us a line at the podcast, we'd love to hear from you too and learn about your story. I think when we try to explain it to other people, they're just like, what? I've never heard of that. And we're like, well, we hadn't heard of it either. So
right.
We're in the same boat with you.
And the other thing is I thought when I first heard of this, what's the first thing you do? You try to find somebody famous that has it. That way you can say, well, so-and-so has this, the actor or the singer or what have you. There's no one that's famous that has this. And so, I don't know, maybe famous people, if you're famous, you don't get it. Maybe that's the key to getting rid of it. I don't know. But there are no famous people that have it that I'm aware of. And I've looked and I've gone on to different groups. And that's the key thing I hear is who's famous that has it? And everyone says no one.
If we were to ask you a closing question, this has kind of been a story of hope so far, so we won't ask you the story of hope question, but what would you tell your younger self? Like if we could fast forward back to our interview a year ago when we were at first year of marriage, 6 hours of appointment, no answer, what would you tell yourself?
Just be patient and know that God's in control.
Mm-hmm.
That no matter the outcome, He's in control. Because there was definitely a time where even just right until I found out what this diagnosis is, that I thought this is useless. We're spending time, money, effort, resources, whatever, to find out an answer that I'm not convinced we're ever going to find out. And when you have a rare disease, that makes it more difficult to diagnose it.
Yeah.
That might be the reason it took so long. And when you're going to the specialists, the people that should know, and they can't find out, and you get referred to these places, and you get all these tests and they just aren't getting answers. You feel like a pincushion after a while.
Yeah.
Or at least I did. I don't know if I was discouraged, but just to the point where, okay, enough's enough. I don't think we're going to find the answer.
You actually looked at me and told me that probably about a month before your specialty neurology appointment. You said, I don't think they're going to find it.
I didn't. I really didn't. And, they did. And that changes me because now, as I said earlier, I know what I'm fighting against. So I think if you're in a situation where you don't think you're going to get the answers and you're not getting the answers, you know what? Be patient because God knows the answers. God knows what you need.
Yeah.
And the anxiety from it is just not worth it. The amount of fret that you have, if that's a way to say that, the worry that you have from it is probably not worth it.
I would encourage people not to give up hope and to keep seeking the person that has the answers that you need or the knowledge base that you need in order to have a diagnosis or to get better. I know from clients that I've talked to in the past who were misdiagnosed or, maybe they had been diagnosed with bipolar disorder, but they really had PTSD, and you explain to them, you're telling me about all these traumatic things that you've been through. Here are some of the symptoms of PTSD. This is actually actually something that's highly treatable. We can work through this trauma and we can help you get to a better place. That's so encouraging and so hopeful for them, or for somebody who is dealing with obsessions that makes them feel like, well, I must be crazy or I must be horrible. But then when they learn they have OCD, there's this relief that comes to it as well. Like, oh, this is a condition. It has a treatment. I can get better. I may be waxing and waning throughout my life, but I can be in a better place than I am right now. I know that we had people tell us even like, hey, if you have to, go to the Mayo Clinic, then go to the Mayo Clinic. Like, don't give up on yourself. Find the answers. And thankfully, we just had to get to the correct specialist at Vanderbilt that we needed to see, who was just incredibly nice and compassionate. We're appreciative for him.
I would say, too, and you said this to me before, that it would be difficult if I were still single.
Yeah.
I don't know how I would have handled this. It would have been very, very difficult. And I would say, if you are single or in a situation where you feel like you're alone with something, don't do it alone. Get a prayer partner. You can call your church if you have one and say, hey, would you pray for me? But do not do it alone, because that's the worst thing you could do. Support the people who have prayed for me, the people who have stood beside me, Carrie, who's been right there the whole time. That means so much. That's what gets you through your day sometimes. When you really want to give up, you're like, I'm done with this. This is so terrible. Mm-hmm. And then they're right there cheering you on. You can do this. And it makes a world of difference. So don't do it alone.
Yeah. Of course, as always, it was great to have you back on the podcast. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in and listening to us ramble about our second year of marriage.
Yeah, thanks for having me, by the way. I enjoy this.
We had no script for this. We just kind of rolled with it off the cuff, which is not something either one of us normally do. We normally have a list of questions.
Yes. I have no notes whatsoever. That's rare.
Yes, but I think it turned out the way it was supposed to. Wanted to encourage everyone to subscribe to our newsletter. They can do that by going on the Hope for Anxiety and OCD.com website. There's a free relaxation download for you there. And I'm going to be working on some other free downloads for people, maybe PDFs or things like that. So when I have those out, I will let y'all know about those as well. We have a goal to really double our email subscribers by the end of the year to get to about 150. So if you can help us with that goal, we would so appreciate it. And we'll be giving away t-shirts exclusively to our email subscribers. We never heard back from our last winner, Lisa D. We're going to try to reach out to you one more time, but then I don't know. We may have to give your t-shirt away to somebody else. Don't miss out on your free t-shirt.
Lisa, please call her and tell her.
Lisa, claim your t-shirt.
Claim your t-shirt. You don't want to miss that.
I really thought maybe she thought it was a scam when I emailed her.
She may have.
This is not a scam. You really get a t-shirt. Anyway, thank you so much for listening, everybody. Hope for Anxiety and OCD is a production of By the Well Counseling. Our show is hosted by me, Carrie Bock, licensed professional counselor in Tennessee. Opinions given by our guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect the views of myself or By the Well Counseling. Our original music is by Brandon Mangroom. Until next time, may you be comforted by God's great love for you.